Hey there, all you Broadway Jeopardy geniuses. Welcome back to Broadway by Ghostlight. I'm Mark Bonanni, and this is episode 19 of Broadway Jeopardy, the world's most popular musical theater trivia game show, hosted by a white dude with a beard.
Is it though?
I've got a new episode of Broadway Jeopardy coming out every week, so make sure you're subscribed so you won't miss an episode. There's 26 all new clues and 5 new categories coming your way today, so let's get right into this week's game. This is Broadway Jeopardy! Looking at this week's categories, we start off as always with last week's final Jeopardy round, which is biographical musicals, shows based on a real-life person. That's followed by It's All Greek to Me, musicals based on or inspired by Greek mythology. Then it's A Little Priest. This category looks at different clergy or religious figures in musicals. After that, we have Off-Broadway, looking at some musicals that have, as of this moment, never played Broadway, only Off-Broadway here in New York City. And finally, we have the Gerald Schoenfeld Theater, looking at various shows that have played the Broadway house. And we end with the final Jeopardy round, so make sure and keep track of your scores. If you want, I'm not checking, you do you. We start off, of course, with the $200 round, or the Overture round as I call it, where the questions are leaning to the easier side to hopefully help you rack up some fake dough early on before I squeeze it out of you with the harder questions. Beginning with biographical musicals, your first $200 clue is: the musical Coco, about the life of Coco Chanel, starred this Hollywood legend, who starred in the films The Philadelphia Story, Bringing Up Baby, and On Golden Pond, among others. Who is Katharine Hepburn is the answer. The show proved popular despite mediocre reviews, and Katharine Hepburn even did the first national tour of the musical after the show closed in New York. Coco was Miss Hepburn's only foray into the world of musical theater, besides bothering her next-door neighbor, Stephen Sondheim, that is. I mean, that's literally a picture of Katharine Hepburn stealing one of Stephen Sondheim's houseplants. Where is that TV miniseries? That's what I want to know. Moving on to the It's All Greek to Me category, the $200 clue is: this smash hit musical is a beautiful retelling of the myth of Orpheus and Eurydice with a score by Anais Mitchell. What is Hadestown? What's fascinating to me about Hadestown, at least, is that I saw it a couple of times off-Broadway where it was first staged, and, it was absolutely brilliant there. And then, of course, I've seen it on Broadway, and what's fascinating is I've never seen a show that worked so well before be changed so much in between productions. And not only that, but both versions, the Broadway and off-Broadway versions, were equally brilliant. And, they were obviously based on the same material. It's the same show for the most part. But the staging and the characterizations of the characters were starkly different. Truth be told, I preferred the off-Broadway version just a smidge more, but truly, it's all a testament to director Rachel Chavkin and her whole team for creating two brilliant versions of the same material. Taking a bite out of the A Little Priest category, the $200 clue is: this is the song that the Mother Abbess sings to help inspire Maria to live the life she wants in The Sound of Music. What is Climb Every Mountain? In the beloved film version starring Julie Andrews, Climb Every Mountain was moved from the Act 1 closer to early in the film's second act. In the film, Peggy Wood, who plays the Mother Abbess, turns towards the light, seemingly seeking divine guidance as she tries to steer young Maria to her best life.
Climb every mountain.
But in actuality, Peggy Wood began the song facing away from the camera because she had major trouble starting the syncing of her lips to the pre-recorded track. Peggy Wood's vocals were dubbed by a woman named Marjorie McKay. Once Miss Wood was able to sort of make a clumsy lip sync entrance out of the camera view, she was able to nail the rest of the song. The $200 clue in the off-Broadway category is: This musical by Tom Jones and Harvey Schmidt is the longest running off-Broadway musical of all time, playing for over 40 years. What is The Fantastics? The intimate, charming musical opened at the Sullivan Street Playhouse off-Broadway on May 3rd, 1960, and closed on January 13th, 2002, after an astounding 17,162 performances.
That's a lot.
The original 1960 cast included Rita Gardner as Louisa, Kenneth Nelson as Matt, the show's lyricist and librettist Tom Jones as Henry, the old actor, and the great Jerry Orbach as El Gallo.
Try to remember the kind of September when life was slow and oh so mellow. Try to remember the kind of September when grass was green and grain was yellow.
And over in the Gerald Schoenfeld Theater category, your final $200 clue is: this Gothic musical, which ran for over 5 years at the Schoenfeld, features the songs This Is the Moment and The Confrontation. What is Jekyll and Hyde, my first Broadway show? Many actors have taken on the dual role of Dr. Henry Jekyll and his animalistic alter ego, Mr. Hyde. Colm Wilkinson, Terrence Mann, Anthony Warlow, and Chuck Wagner, the original Rapunzel's prince in Into the Woods, all played the role in early developments of the show, with Robert Cuccioli opening the show on Broadway. And of course, David Hasselhoff, whom I saw in the show, was the final Jekyll on Broadway.
There's such a fine line between a good man and a bad. David Hasselhoff on Broadway in Jekyll and Hyde.
This is no day at the beach.
I hope you all aced that first round. Let's move on to the only slightly harder $400 round now. Circling back to biographical musicals, your $400 clue is: this currently running musical, named for a part of Manhattan, is about the young life of music star Alicia Keys. What is Hell's Kitchen? The Bio Jukebox musical started life at the Public Theater off-Broadway before moving to the Shubert Theater, where it was the most Tony-nominated show last year, winning 2 for the wonderful Keisha Lewis and the young leading lady Malaya Joy Moon, making a triumphant Broadway debut.
You get through these doors, it's like all of New York City is singing to you.
This girl is on fire.
Over in It's All Greek to Me, the $400 clue is: the stage version of this 1997 Disney film is set to go the distance to London, where it will open next year. What is Hercules? One of my all-time favorite Disney movies. Hercules as a stage show first premiered at the outdoor Delacorte Theater, home to the Public's Shakespeare in the Park, in 2019. It then played the Paper Mill Playhouse in Melbourne, New Jersey, where Disney's Newsies tried out as well. And the show, in its hopefully final form, will play the Theatre Royale Drury Lane in the West End in summer of 2025. I can't wait. I hope it transfers, and it's amazing. Next up for the A Little Priest category, your $400 clue is: Big Daddy Brubeck is the leader of the Church of the Rhythm of Life in this 1966 musical. What is Sweet Charity? Big Daddy in Sweet Charity is one of those great one-song wonder characters in musicals who only have one scene, have a big memorable solo, and then are never heard from again. Big Daddy and his Church of the Rhythm of Life is attended by the newly dating Charity and Oscar, because Oscar is a member of the Church of the Month Club. Let's take a trip off Broadway, where your $400 clue is: this 2-person musical by Jason Robert Brown is about a relationship's beginning and end. Jamie tells the story from start to finish, while Kathy tells the story from finish to start. What is The Last 5 Years? The semi-autobiographical musical by Jason Robert Brown originally starred Norbert Leo Butz as Jamie and Sherry Renee Scott as Kathy. I'll tell you, and any theater nerds around my age can attest, the original cast recording of that show had a chokehold on theater fans for years in the early 2000s. I actually had the honor of seeing a concert of the show in 2004 starring Lauren Kennedy, who had played Kathy in the original Chicago production before it came to New York, and Jason Robert Brown himself playing Jamie. Incredible. The show is finally due to reach Broadway later this season, starring Tony winner Adrienne Warren and Nick Jonas. The final $400 clue in the Gerald Schoenfeld Theater category is: this now classic comedy play by Neil Simon opened at the Schoenfeld in 1965 before being turned into a well-known film and popular TV show starring Tony Randall and Jack Klugman. What is The Odd Couple? The original production starred Art Carney as Felix and Walter Matthau as Oscar, a role he would of course reprise in the film version with frequent co-star Jack Lemmon. And a revival that I was lucky enough to see in 2005 starred Nathan Lane and Matthew Broderick. Jumping right into the $600 round now, back in biographical musicals, your $600 clue is: the musical Here Lies Love, with a score by David Byrne and Fatboy Slim, is about the life of this controversial Filipino political figure. Who is Imelda Marcos is the answer. Here Lies Love takes the story of the famous Filipino First Lady and her dictator husband and sets it in a nightclub. The Broadway Theater was gutted and turned into a thumping club where audiences could either sit or stand right in the action. True story, I actually got to be in the commercial for the show. They had a small audience come during the daytime hours and they did some numbers and had all these drone cameras flying around. It was super fun. I'm sure you all saw me in it. What? No? You didn't notice me in the commercial? I'm right there. That's me. Yep, that blob right there. I'm pretty famous now. Moving on to It's All Greek to Me, the $600 clue is: this musical version of the first book in the Percy Jackson series opened on Broadway in 2019. What is The Lightning Thief? Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief is an amazing book in an incredible series by author Rick Riordan. I read all the Percy Jackson books years ago and love his other mythology-inspired series as well. Since the book's release, it's gotten a horrible film version. I have never left a theater so mad in my life. It's also gotten a pretty great TV series on Disney Plus and the Broadway adaptation with a score by Rob Rokicki. Let's change religions in the A Little Priest category with the $600 clue. This is the end of the blessing that the rabbi gives for the czar in Fiddler on the Roof that begins with, "May God bless and keep the czar." What is Far Away From Us? The humorous exchange happens during the extended opening number tradition.
Rabbi, may I ask you a question?
Certainly, Labish.
Is there a proper blessing for the Tsar?
A blessing for the Tsar, of course. May God bless and keep the Tsar far away from us.
The man who played the rabbi in the film version of Fiddler was Zvi Schuyler. He was no stranger to Fiddler on the Roof. He was the original Mortka the Innkeeper on Broadway, and the only member of the company to play all 3,242 performances of the show. The $600 clue in the off-Broadway category is: right before another adaptation of the same material would open on Broadway, the off-Broadway version opened starring Idina Menzel, Taye Diggs, and Brian Darcy James belting out the Andrew Lippa songs. What is The Wild Party? This is another cast album that us millennial theater nerds had on repeat. The off-Broadway Andrew Lippa version of The Wild Party opened in February of 2000, before the Broadway version of The Wild Party, with the score by Michael John LaChiusa, opened in April of 2000. Though based on the same narrative poem, the two versions are pretty remarkably different in tone and focus, with Lippa's off-Broadway version being a more popish sounding belt your face off kind of musical. Taking a seat at the Gerald Schoenfeld Theater, we have the $600 clue. This currently running musical is based on the beloved book by Nicholas Sparks, as well as the famous film version of the same name. What is The Notebook? The musical has a score by singer-songwriter Ingrid Michaelson and uses the trope of having different actors play the two leads at different stages in their lives. I very much enjoyed The Notebook. Tony winner Marianne Plunkett as the older Allie gives an incredible performance, as does middle Allie and younger Allie as well, Joy Woods and Jordan Tyson respectively, who will be playing sisters Louise and June to Audra McDonald's Madame Rose in the upcoming revival of Gypsy, which is just perfect casting. It's time now to really turn up the heat with the $800 round, but before we do, please, oh pretty please, hit that little like button for me. It helps the algorithm show this video to more fine folks like yourselves, which really helps me and the channel out, and you know, it gives me the warm fuzzies. Thank you all, I really do appreciate it. Okay, up next for biographical musicals, the $800 clue is: this musical is about the real-life Marx Brothers and their mother as the comedy icons develop their signature personas. What is Minnies Boys? I love Minnies Boys. Minnies Boys has a great score by Hal Hackety and Larry Grossman and some hilarious Marx Brothers antics, which is really what audiences wanted to see. The issue was, the show was called Minnies Boys. Minnie, the matriarch of the Marx clan, was played by none other than Shelley Winters, who was a major star. So of course the show's focus was mainly on Minnie. But I do adore the show, and yes, you guessed it, I do indeed have a full breakdown you can watch after this. I do recommend it. It's a really fun show. Let's take it back to the 1940s now with the It's All Greek to Me category. The $800 clue is: the musical By Jupiter, with a score by Richard Rodgers and Lorenz Hart, starred this famed dancer best known for The Wizard of Oz. Who is Ray Bolger? Bolger was, of course, the Scarecrow in the classic 1939 film The Wizard of Oz. But before that, he was a Broadway hoofer for many years, including being in the original cast of Rodgers and Hart's On Your Toes, where he danced the famous Slaughter on 10th Avenue ballet. Later, Ray Bolger would star in the musicals All-American and Where's Charlie? Over in the A Little Priest category, your $800 clue there is: David Hyde Pierce played a church bishop in this musical, which premiered off-Broadway in 2023, the last musical by Stephen Sondheim. What is Here We Are? The musical is based on two films by Mexican filmmaker Luis Buñuel called The Exterminating Angel and The Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie. Sondheim had been working on the piece for years before his death, and many feared we would never see it. But thankfully, it was done off-Broadway at The Shed in 2023, and it's heading to London soon, actually. I found the show to be very Sondheim, very enjoyable, and very weird.
I'm a terrible priest. No, I'm in the wrong job. I keep spilling the wine. I keep crumbling the wafers. I have no charisma.
Let's stick with off-Broadway in its own category. The $800 clue is: this musical about a fictional Christian music boy band originally starred Tyler Maynard and Andy Carl. What is Altar Boys? Altar Boys, the musical, takes place in real time as the final concert of the Christian boy band. The members of Altar Boys are hilariously named Matthew, Mark, Luke, and Juan. And the fifth member's name is Abraham, who is Jewish. The show played New World stages, then called Dodger stages, for 5 years and over 2,000 performances.
God put the rhythm in me. 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 Put it in me. God put the rhythm 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 in me. Put it.
And the final $800 clue for the Gerald Schoenfeld Theater category is, this is the original name of the theater before it was changed to the Gerald Schoenfeld Theater. What is the Plymouth Theater? So if you've been annoyed that I've said some of the older shows in this category opened at the Schoenfeld when they actually opened at the Plymouth, now you know why I didn't want to give away this answer to the question. Was anyone actually upset that I did that? I would have been. Anyway, the Plymouth is one of, if not my favorite theater on Broadway. It was the first theater I ever attended, like I said, at Jekyll and Hyde. It was the first theater I ever returned to, and it's where I saw my 100th show, Cheetah Rivera, The Dancer's Life, which happened to be Cheetah's birthday on the night I saw it. And special guest Dick Van Dyke appeared in the show that night, performing songs from Bye Bye Birdie with Cheetah. Oh my God, can you imagine? It was just a picture perfect evening. To me, when you try to imagine a Broadway theater in your mind, it looks like the Plymouth, or, you know, the Gerald Schoenfeld now. All right, my friends, it's here. The big show, the main event. It's the $1,000 round. Cue that dramatic music. Good luck, everyone. Our last look at some biographical musicals gives us the $1,000 clue. This musical, which premiered at the Manhattan Theater Club, starred Donna Murphy and Michael Cerveris as married theatrical luminaries Lotte Lenya and Kurt Weill. What is Love Music? Love Music was a fascinating musical, not just because of the subject matter and detailing the life of Kurt Weill and his wife and muse Lotte Lenya, which is a fascinating topic, but also it's just not the kind of musical you see much on Broadway. It was very much non-commercial. I mean, you know, that's why it was at the Manhattan Theater Club, a subscription-based model like the Roundabout, which is, you know, able to do these more limited artistic pieces. It was also Hal Prince's first Broadway musical as director since Parade in 1998, so that was a joy to see as well. Oppa! Your $1,000 clue for It's All Greek to Me is, this sung through Jerome Maras' John Latouche musical, an adaptation of parts of the Iliad and the Odyssey, closed quickly on Broadway despite receiving rave reviews. What is The Golden Apple is the answer. One of the first ever off-Broadway to Broadway transfers, The Golden Apple brought Helen, Paris, and Ulysses from the Iliad and Odyssey to the early 1900s. As the clue stated, the critics raved about the show, but it just failed to find an audience. In Ken Mendelbaum's Bible on Flop Musicals Not Since Carrie, he states that in all the other examples in the book, the show failed the audience. But in the case of The Golden Apple, it was the audience that failed the show. Our last look at A Little Priest gives us the $1,000 clue. This flop musical about the Shroud of Turin featured lasers, mimes, and a group of dancing priests. What is Into the Light? Yes, a musical about the Shroud of Turin. Sounds like a slam dunk to me. The musical, starring Dean Jones, lasted only 13 previews and 6 performances, thanks in large part to reviews like this.
For tonight's show, Into the Light is one of the darkest moments in Broadway history.
The only miracle here is how this show got to Broadway. And heaven only knows it will take an act of God to make it survive beyond tonight.
As a test of faith, this show is ludicrous, and as a test of endurance, it will drive even the most devout theater goer to the exit.
If you want to hear more about Into the Light, definitely check out my video, 5 Bonker Broadway Bombs Too Crazy to Last. That show and the other ones I talk about are so fascinating. For $1,000, the last clue in the off-Broadway category is, this Adam Guettel musical, based on a real-life incident, is not ideal for people with claustrophobia. What is Floyd Collins? The musical, which opened at Playwrights Horizons in 1996, tells the true story of Floyd Collins, a cave explorer in the 1920s. While exploring the Sand Cave located in Kentucky, Collins found himself stuck 55 feet below the ground. A massive rescue effort led to one of the first ever media frenzies in history. I won't spoil anything for you here, since many more folks are going to be able to see the show now that it's also set to make its Broadway debut later this season at Lincoln Center. Big year for off-Broadway musicals finally making their Broadway debuts. I'm very excited for this production, as the score for Floyd Collins is one of my favorites. And our curtain call clue for the Gerald Schoenfeld Theater for $1,000 is: this short-lived musical, based on the book Therese Racken, features a score by Harry Connick Jr. and was directed and choreographed by Susan Stroman. What is Thou Shalt Not? Though it opened at the Plymouth, aka Schoenfeld, it was actually a Lincoln Center production, but the smash hit Contact was still packing the Vivian Beaumont, so the musical had to find another home. Critics and audiences alike ravaged the musical, starring Craig Bierko, Norbert Leo Butz, and Deborah Monk. I did see it, and I remember vividly the house being half the size for Act 2 as it was for Act 1. I was very young in my theater-going life, and I enjoyed it. I've actually never really gone back and revisited the show in my adult life because I don't want to have to dislike it. I'd rather leave it as a good experience. I once actually told Harry Connick Jr. that I saw and really enjoyed Thou Shalt Not, and he said, "That makes two people, you and my wife." There you have it. And now we have reached the final Jeopardy round. Tally up your scores so far and decide how much you want to wager in the category Comden and Green, looking at the musicals with a book and/or lyrics by super team Betty Comden and Adolph Green. Everyone had their wagers in? Warren? Richard? Patrick? Harpo? Chico? Zeppo? Okay, here is your final clue. In On the 20th Century, the loony Letitia Primrose, originally played by Imogen Coca, put stickers all over the luxury train that say this, also the title of her big solo. What is repent is the answer. Actually, the stickers technically say repent for the time is at hand, but whatever, we're just gonna go with repent for this game, I guess. The character of Letitia Primrose is a religious fanatic and a pathological liar, which causes lots of problems for theatrical director Oscar Jaffe and his associates as they try to persuade Jaffe's one-time star and lover Lily Garland to do another show with them. Miss Primrose puts repent stickers all over the train, including the very front of the locomotive itself, during her big number, Repent.
Repent, repent, repent. Stop those dirty little doings, every man and boy and wife. Repent, repent, repent. Stop those wicked little wooings that are screwing up your life. Walk the narrow path, my friends, and keep your thinking pure. Try to raise your minds, my friends, a notch above the sewer.
And that's this week's game! We made it through another week. How did everyone fare? Be sure to let me know your scores in the comments. I love seeing how you all did. And you can always suggest categories in the comments. You guys have come up with some great ones. Or, you can just comment on my many spelling and grammatical errors. That's fun too. If you want to really have your voice heard, you can check out my Patreon, where these beautiful people and many more support me in the channel and help choose categories from time to time. Thank you as always to all my wonderful patrons at every level. You guys are everything to me. There's a link in the video description if you want to check out the Patreon, as well as my merch shop with lots of fun designs there. You can follow me on the socials at @BWayGhostlight if you want to connect outside of YouTube. I'll be back next week with 26 all-new Broadway brainbusters, but until then, I'm Mark Bonanni. This is Broadway by Ghostlight. Thanks for playing.